How come it sounds
Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Night Live, your favorite automotive show where we talk about all the things that affect the customer experience at your store. And every week I bring on the experts to share with us what they do or what they've done to improve the customer experience. Actionable items that you can use at your store tomorrow morning. And this week I have a very, very special guest. Paulette Meijer. You may notice some similarity in the last names.
Yeah, a little.
A little. Because this is Mrs. Meijer, or the nitty-gritty yarn girl, as she's known out on the internet. So welcome to the show, Paulette.
Good evening, and thank you so much, and it's great to be here with you.
So this week, you know, this is my 46th year in the business, and every day I learn something new. No matter how long we're in this business, we think we know everything or we think we know most everything. But the fact of the matter is we always learn new things. It's amazing how these things just pop up. So I'm in a store and I'm sharing some new concepts with the dealers. And it's very well received. They're all over it. I share similar concepts with some colleagues, and it's not as well received. And after the show, I said to my wife, I said, I just don't understand it. Everybody thinks this is great, but not everybody thinks it's great. And what did you say to me? What was the observation that you had?
Well, it was really interesting because Paul said, I showed this to the dealers and they thought it was fantastic. And when I showed it to this other person, they said, this is just never going to work. It's way too much information. I just tell them everything. And I said to Paul, well, it's clear that that person processes and communicates with auditory communication. There are so many different communication styles, and even though the information that you had was good and the prop was great, the delivery for the person who you showed it to wasn't communicating or resounding with that person because it's not their method of communication. So handing that off to them was like, oh my God, I have to read all this. And for you, it was perfect because you like to communicate that way.
That's how I do it. But the thing for me was that I never realized what an impact simple communication has on others, because we look at things as to how we like them. Okay. And I read a book years ago, The 5 Love Languages. And I thought I was doing for you what you wanted. I couldn't understand why you didn't feel the same way, but.
Well, it was nice what you were doing. It's just that that's not the same language that I live by.
Right. It was for me.
Yeah, exactly.
I was doing for you what I would like for me, not even realizing it. So the realization as to the communication styles, that really hit home. And now I'm more conscious of it because I noticed the other day I was in a meeting and one of the dealers was extremely engaged and the other one was sitting there like this. It wasn't that they had their eyes closed and their head was hanging like this. No. But I realized right off the bat, that's somebody that I need to take out a prop, right? And when I took out the card and I handed the card over, now that person was fully immersed in the conversation. So I figured that this would probably be a great topic because vendors benefit from this, dealers benefit from this at all different levels. Let me just say hi to a couple of folks here. Our good friend Larry.
Hi,
Larry Feldman. Good evening, Paulette and Paul. Robert Allen Carvel. He's from Atlanta. Good Sunday all. Looking forward to this episode. And Greg Dudley, great supporter of the show, says hi all. Robert Allen Carvel says, always nice to have the boss on the podcast.
Thank you, Robert. It's nice that someone recognizes that.
So there are 3 communication styles. Why don't you run them? Let's run through them.
Okay, so in my past life as a sales trainer, we learned about communication styles, and one of the things that I learned was that I was communicating one way while lots of people were processing in a different way. So there are basically 3 communication styles that we deal with every day. It's people either process. When we talk about communication, we're really talking about how do they process information. So you can process or communicate visually, auditory, and kinesthetic. So if you think about people who are visual, they like to see things. Even if you give them a piece of paper to read, they're very happy because now they can take a look at it and they can process by reading it. An auditory communicator is very happy listening or telling. Auditory communicators love to hear the words. It helps them to process information. And then there's that kinesthetic person that wants to just give me the information and go away and let me make my own decision, or let me try it and do it myself. Now, we all have all 3 communication styles, but we all have one dominant style. And that's the part that's the style that we most often want to communicate and process information with.
It's important to recognize that there are 3, to understand them, and then understand how it applies to your business. Okay, because when a customer comes before us, we don't necessarily know what style of communicator they are. And let's face it, the basics of making any sale, they have to like you and they have to trust you. But if you don't communicate in their language, how are they going to have the opportunity to like you? It's no different than if I were to drop you off in the middle of Japan, not knowing one word of Japanese. How are you going to get them to like you?
Smile.
Well,
Visual. It's visual. It builds trust.
Okay.
It just, if you don't know how to communicate with people, you can reach out your hand. Someone would shake your hand, put their arm around you. Those are kinesthetic people, and just start to build relationships that way. So you might have just been joking by saying putting someone in a foreign country and not knowing how to communicate with people, but just that smile is going to let them know you're friendly.
Now you see what I did there?
What'd you do?
I threw out a curveball to let everybody know that you need to be able to communicate in all those ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we had some really significant things happen besides the one that you had, the situation that you had with your little visual prop.
Yeah.
We did a retreat this weekend, and we had an instructor at the retreat. Now, knitting is a very kinesthetic craft, trade, whatever you want to call it. We all process with our hands. When we learn, though, there are 2 other communication styles that come into play. Just because we're using our hands doesn't mean we know what we're doing. And when someone came out of the class, they made a suggestion that we have a video, an overhead, so that they could see what was happening. And the comment that this one person made was, I can watch and do and hear and do, but I cannot watch and hear and do. And so by having the props and the video and the actual doing, we were reaching all different communication styles. So I learned from that we had to be sure that we have that little overhead projector in our classes from now on. So you think you have all the bases covered, but not always. And the important thing is to learn from the people who are there because they're helping you. They're giving you cues. That person gave us a cue.
You're right.
They were a visual communicator. because hearing didn't help them with the doing. It was the watching that would have helped them with the doing. So really very interesting.
And we're fortunate that they told us, but in a normal
Right.
retail environment, you may not necessarily have that opportunity, right? That old thing about you never get a second chance to make a first impression. Well, if you don't hit it off just right with them, you may lose them without even knowing why.
Absolutely.
Right? I find it very interesting. Now it becomes even more interesting because I'm picking up on it more.
And you're
Right?
more aware of it.
What's that?
You're more aware of it now.
I'm more aware of it. So you can tell. So unless it doesn't matter what we think, it matters what the customer, what the prospect thinks. And if we don't know going into the situation how they communicate, then we need to mix in different styles within our delivery. And then we need to really look at the body language to see how are they receiving information. What is it that we're doing or saying that's causing them to become more engaged? Let me get to a couple of comments. Greg Dudley says the human brain needs to read, speak, and write something before it's set to memory.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And these are things we don't think about, but because there's so many things that we do during the course of our day, but these are key elements. These are the basics, if you will. Robert Allen Carvel says, my clients ask, why are you always smiling? I tell them I love what I do and knowing I am making a difference in someone's life and business.
So your smile is building trust.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's a universal communication, like shaking hands, universal communications. So I would like to ask the audience, how do you all like to be communicated with? How do you deliver and process information? Because I think that's really key to how you reach other people when you're communicating with them. So, just think for a second, what is your communication style? Your main one. Remember, we all have all three, but I'd be curious to know what you think yours are.
Marshall Sheldon, and this guy lives the Kaizen lifestyle. Always improving.
We were talking about this. Yep.
You should do the same with junior employees. Practice on them to perfect your skill. This is something you could practice with everybody because we have conversations with some of us with random strangers.
Box of rocks.
I'll talk to a box of rocks. But guess what? Now when I talk to that box of rocks, I'm going to try different communication styles and see, just for fun, if I could determine what style they are and then change my delivery to be more engaging than I already am.
Well, and if you watch yes, I did watch it. If you watch the reactions when you're talking to someone, or when I just said talking to someone, or say you reach out your hand, you reach out to touch someone's shoulder, and that's not good. That's not how they want to be communicated to. They don't want that. They're not a kinesthetic person.
Only my sister. I tell her, don't touch me. Don't touch me.
So, and I'm reading
Greg Dudley?
Greg's comment.
All right. Over 90% of human communication is nonverbal.
And so we need to think about how people want to be communicated to. So one of the things that I used to use in my classes is cues that you can take and cues that you can deliver to help understand or to help recognize the way someone wants to be communicated with, by asking questions, key questions like, can I show you something more? What more can I tell you? Would you like to get in the vehicle? I just touched 3 different communication styles there. And if I'm working with one person, by asking those 3 questions and then watching and observing their response, I will then know how to best communicate with them. But that doesn't mean that they're always going to be exactly on that one place, because otherwise they can key out what you're saying if it gets too droning. So you want to keep changing what you're doing to keep their attention.
A funny scene in a movie comes to mind about kinesthetic people. I think it was Rosie Greer in the movie Used Cars, where he's trying to get the customer into the car to test drive it. And he's just yelling at these people, get in the car.
Maybe they didn't want to drive it.
That was his communication style, right? So this has been going on for many, many years. Let's see. Greg Dudley says, I offer 3 items to convey one message.
Right.
Verbal, visual, and tactile.
Yep, absolutely. That's perfect. That's exactly what you want to do. Because what happens when you're working with more than one person?
Right. You have a couple sitting in front of you at the desk, a husband and wife. It's important to deliver it in all ways.
All different communication styles, because Paul and I have totally different dominant communication styles, totally different. And
that's a whole nother story unto itself.
Well, he'll going to come home and tell me this big story, and I just wanted to get to the point so we can go on to the next thing, because I am not an auditory communicator.
Are you insinuating that I am?
I'm not insinuating. I'm actually saying that you are. Paul is a very, very visual and auditory communicator. Okay. How many times will Paul say, let me ask you a question? Why does he want to? Because he has to ask the question. You're an auditory communicator. Or I'm going to tell you a story. I'd rather grab a project and show it to you, because I'm more visual and kinesthetic.
So when you have the husband and wife sitting in front of you at the desk, try these different methods, and then when you can pull from them what their preferred communication style is, then you can truly mix it in as you're having the conversation with both. Because when I found in my meeting that the one person, he was visual, and the other one was auditory, I'll start off with service, and then I'll go into sales, or vice versa, depending on who has how much time. But in that meeting, I had both fixed and variable. And I found that I had to go back and forth between the two. And I had to offer the card that I use as a prop to that person. And that drew everybody in. So you almost feel like a ping pong ball going back and forth. But when you're conducting a meeting, our job it's like conducting an orchestra, right? You have to be able to keep both sides engaged, and then get through the information so that they understand it the way they need to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
We got a couple of comments here. Pete Perez, who I had the pleasure of having a conversation with the other day after we connected on LinkedIn. Great to speak with you, man. He says, with the wide adoption of using Zoom, do you find it challenging to assess communication style when you're not face-to-face? That's a really good question.
So I would watch for their eye contact, get your cues from them. So yeah, you can watch people and learn a lot from them by doing that. So if you are in a Zoom meeting and someone's, and I know our phones they're extensions of our bodies today, but if someone is scrolling on their phone while you're doing a presentation, that doesn't mean that you are not interesting. It doesn't mean that you don't have a good point. It just means that you need to find another way to get the message across to that person. So in your Zoom, you might be able to display slides. So you might make someone else the presenter for a moment and ask them to do something. You might have an exercise in the Zoom where you could ask people questions and have them respond. All those different ways are ways to get people involved, no matter what communication style they are. When many years ago, when I was learning all these things about communication styles and then having to put them into effect in training rooms, we learned that if you're doing a 1-hour presentation, every 15 minutes, you change the communication style, the style of delivery, so that you're holding everyone's attention. So for 15 minutes, you might have an opening conversation, a presentation. Then you break people up into groups and you do an exercise. Now that's getting the kinesthetic people involved. You have them appoint a speaker in the group. Now you have that auditory person involved in the group. So you just keep going back and forth, involving everyone. So yeah, in a Zoom, you can, it's not so much assessing their style as it is communicating in all styles so that you reach everybody, because you can't sit there and say, okay, that person's a kinesthetic and that person's an auditory. So if you make sure your delivery is varied, then you'll get everyone into the conversation and the presentation.
And when you go to meetings, they do this masterfully. Okay. When you think they're just asking the group to get up and write something on the flip chart, right? That's not by chance. That's not just to fill the time. They are practicing those different styles of communication to make sure that they've reached everybody in the room.
And if you hate getting up to do those exercises, you're probably not a kinesthetic person. If you don't want, like, we have to do another exercise, or we have to break up into groups of 2. Oh my gosh, I have to talk to somebody. Oh yeah, there's so many ways to tell what's happening when you're in front of the room by watching the behavior of the people when they're part of that group.
So how about when they call and you get that guy in the front of the room? Oh, me. I got this.
So we have more questions.
Marshall Sheldon, when I'm teaching my apprentices, I always do my best to hit 3 of the 4 main ways folks learn: visual, auditory, read and write, and kinesthetic. You figure out real quick how the person learns.
Yep.
When you do that, and then you respond to them in their preferred way, it shows them that you care.
Right.
Otherwise, they're just doing whatever. Robert Allen Carvel, eye contact when speaking to someone is key. Nodding when they are speaking shows that you're listening to what they are saying.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that communicates back to them.
Right.
People always want affirmation that what they're saying or presenting is valuable.
Right. It makes them feel important. Marshall Sheldon, Pete Perez, I find my apprentices don't get as much out of online video style classes as they do in the person classes. I agree with you, Marshall, 100%, because you don't know, as Paulette was saying, you don't know if they're scrolling on something. If, maybe you see the eyes scroll down a little bit, something's going on. And that's assuming they have the camera on, right? There are many meetings I see people don't have the camera on. They have an avatar, or they have a photo. I much prefer live in person. And Marshall says, I had a video style class a while back that sent a box of parts that we could put our hands on in person while on video. And I thought that was awesome.
That is awesome. We had something one time where we were involved in a Zoom class, and then they sent all the participants a pizza or something that was a gift that during break time you could eat that. So that was something that you received that touched those people in that way.
That was during COVID, I think.
Yeah. You couldn't go. They couldn't do a live conference. They did a Zoom conference, but they sent everyone lunch because they couldn't have you in for lunch. It was really cool.
Yeah.
So that, and all those things, it's not just communication, it's building the relationship. And when you reach people in the way that they like to be communicated with and the way they're going to process the information you have to deliver, then you're building trust. You have a better chance of a good outcome from that meeting. And you can collaborate when you're working together because you're speaking their language. Right.
We have Vernon Longhorn Davis. I find that when I train or consult, it is better in person than via video. 100%, man.
I'm sorry, go ahead. No.
When you're training in person, eye contact, body language, I find it easier to assess them and then be able to change the way I deliver the messaging because it's in real time, right? On video, you never know 100% what's going on.
So if we're doing a Zoom or team meeting, there's so many different names for them today, and you want to involve everyone. And so if we start them with their microphones off and everybody's muted when we start, well, now we've shut everybody off, right? We've told every auditory communicator in that room that they have nothing to say. They can't say anything.
They're not important.
Right, because now they can't speak. So we've lost that audience. So we have to make sure that we keep people involved when we're in a Zoom meeting, which may seem like an impossibility, but you can have slides on the screen. You can say, hey, Joe, you just have made a great comment in the chat box. Why don't you unmute yourself and share that with the group? And so it's really just finding ways. Remote meetings are something we have to get used to, and they're a part of our lives today. And we have to, and I don't want to say we have to embrace them, but what we do have to do is we have to relate to them as a way of communication. And we have COVID to thank for that. And no, do I want to teach people how to knit and crochet and learn all these different classes via Zoom? It's very hard. But we've done it. Right. We've done it, and we still continue to do it. And there are people who have learned this communication method because of COVID who now ask, are you going to offer your classes via Zoom? I'm not going to turn those people away. Right. So we were talking earlier too. I don't know if we have a comment. You can reach.
Vernon says you can react to their reactions
exactly
in real time.
Sure, you can. And I'm not saying to call people out if you see something, but including them brings them back in. Right. When you're doing that. And so you just include them, even if you include them by part of a group exercise, then you can still do that. We were talking before about how social media has been impacted. Yeah. By with all different communication styles. I remember when social media started off with blogging. Remember that? Everybody had a blog. Oh yeah, in the mid 2000s, I was doing blog posts every week for the company that I was with. And so what did we have in a blog post? We had writing, we had text, and maybe an image to attract attention, right? Images, so you got that video person, a visual communicator, and we have a text. And so if there was an auditory communicator who's got it reading your blog, you can bet he's reading it or she's reading it out loud. Right. Right. I find myself reading out loud. No kidding. No kidding, because you're an auditory communicator. Even when you're not in the car, you say I do things to annoy you, but I don't. And you do to annoy anybody. No, I do it. I just do it because that's what I do. So then we went from blogs to vlogs, right? For a while there, we had video blogs. Yeah. People went from being a blogger to being a video blogger, even if they weren't good at video. They were video bloggers, and so now they were reaching that kinesthetic part of us because they had the videos as well. Yeah. Then we went to lives. Now we have live, and now everybody's a speaker doing live presentations in the middle of wherever they want to be, because that's how, and these are all the ways that these people communicate, and that's how they process information. So just reading words on a paper wasn't enough for that video blogger. They had to make a video about it. And then they had to go live about it. And so social media has evolved so much from when it was just, writing on a page, posts on a page. Right. Quite a bit. Steve Chesson, he's out in California. That's one good thing that came out of COVID. And was that virtual meetings? Or working remotely? Yeah. Yes. Like that. Having to be more aware of it, I think. Yeah. Absolutely. And Pete Perez says, thank you for the thoughts and inputs. I also prefer in person, but for example, this week I was on a Zoom meeting between a manufacturer and retailer in different parts of the country. Right. By the way, it was nice to meet you over the phone also, Paul. Yeah, because now we can be in so many places. Absolutely. At the same time. You don't always have the ability to have people from different coasts in the same room. So how, when you were in that meeting with, on one coast or another coast, wherever you were or wherever they were, how do you keep them both involved? in that meeting. You've got to be sure that you're communicating in all different sides. How does that make you feel? A great question for a kinesthetic communicator in a meeting. Can I tell you anything more? Have I shown you enough? What more would you like to see? All these are great ways to reach all the different communication styles and learning styles when you're in a room with somebody, or when you're when you're in a video conference with them. So the same things apply. It doesn't matter where you are.
So even though you're verbally asking them and they're hearing it audibly, but by asking those specific questions,
you're reaching them.
You're reaching them on their level.
And they might say, if you say, have I, what else can I tell you? You know, I've heard enough. Well, my next question would be, can I show you something more? Or have I missed anything in our demonstration? And now if they need that information, then they'll respond to that one. So it's a great way to close the loop on whatever part of the meeting you're in.
As long as you recognize and put all three of those in to make sure you're always pulling them in. And Steve Cheshin says, FaceTime was a game changer. Yep. It really was.
Yeah, it really was. And now we can see people's expressions on the spot. And so when you're dealing with someone in FaceTime, I think facial expressions are everything. They'll give us away every time. And well, I mean, I'm just sitting here watching my hands wave across the screen, and that's such a kinesthetic thing.
And as it relates to the technology piece of it too, you know, I hear all the time in stores, oh, our clients are older. They don't go on the internet, or they don't do this, or they don't do that. Don't rule that out, because you don't know, okay? One day, Paulette and I were sitting on the back deck, and we hear an incoming FaceTime call. And remember who was on that FaceTime call?
No, I don't.
Your mother.
Do. Oh, yeah. We were, I think my mom was still alive. Yeah.
Yeah. we were on the back deck, and we got an incoming FaceTime call from Paulette's mom, otherwise known as my favorite mother-in-law. All right. Now, I'm not going to lie. The video was of the sky because she didn't know to look into it. But the point is, don't rule out different communication methods because you think the other person is too young, too old, too whatever. It's important to utilize all three all the time because you never know. Everybody progresses at a different rate.
It's one thing to hear someone's voice. It's something else to see their face. And for my mom, she wanted to see our face. She didn't care if we couldn't see hers.
I'm not sure if she saw our face because we're looking at the sky.
So. But she was looking like this in the camera.
Yeah. Vernon says, my live show started during the pandemic and still goes on every Sunday.
Yep.
His show is at 9:00. So when I'm responding to all the ones, by the time I'm done, I end up missing a show, unfortunately.
Sorry about that, Vernon.
It's like Larry. Larry has a show on Wednesday nights at 8:00, which is 7:00, which is typically right in the middle of my 3-hour dinner hour. But
we can't miss that.
But fortunately, the restaurant was not that busy, so I was able to join in from the dinner table.
That wasn't nice.
No, I think they appreciate it a lot.
So yeah, we've found that communication, and Paul and I, couples, we need to work on communication with our spouses and partners to be sure that, as Paul said, he was speaking his language, thinking that he was doing such wonderful things, and he was, but they just weren't the way I wanted to receive them. And so just totally different. But we also talked about how do you use this in business with your sales team and with your service department, whenever you're having meetings, it's really important. You've got a group of individuals in a room, and it's one thing that we have 5 generations working together now in some places.
Yeah.
We also have all the different learning styles from all those generations together.
Right.
And so reaching out and how do you involve everyone in that meeting? You might have, I don't know, how long do sales meetings last?
Depends on the store. I've seen some wham bam 10-minute ones, and I've seen some that I could have sworn 2 people died during that meeting.
Well, and and we don't want to have a meeting just for the purpose of having a meeting.
Right.
But we want to make sure that if we have a meeting and we're presenting topics in that meeting, that we present them and involve everybody, whether that's having someone else talk about something that happened. We used to, when I was at Prudential, we had this, we would always talk about our core values at every leadership meeting. And the president of the company, the owner of the company, would ask if anyone would had an example of how one of our core values was demonstrated that in the past month. Now, that was a way of getting people to talk about great things that happened in their offices, but it was also a way to get those auditory people involved early in the process of the meeting. So that first 20, 30 minutes of our meeting focused on the auditory group. Then we went into, we'd always have a presentation or a group exercise. And that got the kinesthetic people involved, where we sat in groups and maybe talked about a new training tool or whatever the new company program that was coming out. And then we had a presenter come and present more information. So you've got the 3 different learning styles in a 1 hour or a 90-minute meeting that just went around the room. So it's really important to do that always.
When you have 10, 15 salespeople and you have your Saturday morning meetings, read the room, look at everybody's body language, because the body language is a key tip-off as to whether or not you're reaching that person. And there's nothing worse than starting off a meeting where people are, everybody's standing there with their arms folded, or somebody, they're rolling their eyes, or they're just not part of the meeting. Everybody's got to pull the rope in the same direction. So this communication, yes, it's important with customers, but it's equally important with your staff, your sales staff, your service staff.
Mm-hmm. And you could even have your service staff or your sales staff and your service staff give examples of how they might be able to use different communication methods to reach. It might be a really great meeting topic for all of you. It's
an exercise.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Meeting topic and exercise.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
That's a great way to practice it.
Absolutely. Have them work in a room.
And now, I'm a firm believer in those styles of meetings and role playing, because sometimes there are things that we do that others might find annoying. I'm sure Paulette never experiences any of that with me.
No.
But it's better to practice with your own people,
right,
and uncover those things than it is to not and have the customer uncover it. And the customer leaves and you're wondering, well, why didn't they buy? Or
I told them everything.
Yeah.
Right? I told them everything. There's not a thing that they don't know about that vehicle. Maybe they just needed to get in it.
Right.
They didn't have a chance.
The Rosie Greer thing. Get in the car.
We have Steve.
All right.
Hi, Steve Apicella.
Hold on. We missed Steve's Chaskin's
sorry
comment.
about Steve.
The book is, he says, the book is never better than the movie.
Well, for you, it's not.
All right. So what kind of learner is Steve?
Well, he's a visual person, that's for sure. And he's, well, actually, he's probably more kinesthetic, because movies are very emotional.
Yeah.
With the book you're reading, it's visual. So yeah, I think that's more kinesthetic than anything. Steve,
do you know your style? Is it kinesthetic? Is it visual? Do you know your style? Because most people do not.
So the question I asked is, do you like to hear, see, or do? That's people used to tell me, just give me the information, tell me what you want, then get out of her way and let her go do it. Because that's me. I need to immerse myself in it. So I'm the kinesthetic person. I
always want to read it to you. No.
You want to see what I wrote? You want to hear what I wrote?
No.
I can read it. I don't need to hear it. Too many words.
All right, we got my good buddy Steve Apicella. Authenticity is timeless and can't be manufactured. Whether in person or remote, we can see it, we can hear it, we know when it's genuine or not. It's actually what makes me gravitate to SNL week after week. Cheers to you both. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
I can't wait to see you in New Orleans at NADA. So let's plan another one of our wonderful meals together. Looking forward to seeing you, man.
Oh, this looks good. What's that? What's Steve's?
Steve Chesson says, read the book
Face
Talking.
I will read the book Face Talking.
Write that down.
Can I listen to it? I'm sorry. I don't have time to read. That's when I'm sitting in the car and on long drives. I always have a audible playing. I always listen to books because it helps to keeps getting past the time.
And Steve says, TV show Lie to Me
and The Mentalist.
And The
I
Mentalist.
have to watch The Mentalist.
I don't think I've seen any of those.
You're too busy. You're too busy talking. Sorry. Well, you're that auditory person.
I'm busy working.
Lie to Me and The Mentalist.
Yeah, now I just have to find time to watch that kind of stuff. I'm always on the go, right?
Yep. So what do I do when I'm knitting to have noise when Paul's not home? Because he's home, I have all the noise.
All the noise you want and some.
No, so I'll knit and I'll have TV on before I listen to something. Unless it's an audible book that I just got that. Because I can knit and listen. This is what I can knit and listen, and I can knit and watch, but I can't knit and watch and listen. All at the same time. Doesn't work that way.
You know what I find fascinating though is that decades and decades in the business, and though we've all heard of the 3 communication styles over the years, but as with everything else, we're so busy that other things come in the way, right? And we don't pay as much attention to it until it's brought back to the forefront. And now I hope that everybody takes a little bit of time and just goes over it a little bit more, exactly what the meanings are of them, and then put into practice when you're having conversations with people to see how they're responding. And then you can gauge your performance also, because how you respond and communicate with them will have a direct effect on your closing ratio.
Well, yeah. And you can, if you're communicating to someone and you think that the conversation or whatever you're doing isn't going right, change your communication style. See if it helps.
Right.
See if it helps. And I think it's just more being aware that, and as you said, we get so wrapped up in the day-to-day that we go out and we start communicating.
Right.
But how are we communicating? In our style. Yeah. And I learned after 30 years of being a sales trainer, I had to learn to communicate in all styles. I'm like a chameleon now, because I had to be. And so
she goes into teacher mode.
I do go into teacher mode, but it's what I did. And so I will do that whenever I feel I need to. And sometimes the teacher telling the student, all right, I've heard enough. You've talked long enough, but it's great. And I love that. I really enjoyed the conversation that brought this to life.
Yeah. It was eye-opening for me. Yeah. And we're not talking about, Joe Average here. We're talking about professionals in the business that have decades of experience and are extremely well-respected and knowledgeable in many areas of our business. But I always find that there are some things that we just need to adapt to, right? Sometimes when I speak with my dealers, and I give them ideas on how to do certain things. And they say, well, I'm not really a big fan of that. I said, well, unless you want to stroke a check for every car that's in your inventory and you want to keep them all, with all due respect, it doesn't matter what you think. It matters what all the folks that you're trying to reach think.
Yeah. So it's been great. And since that one conversation that brought all this to light, we've recognized more and more and more.
It's almost like a game.
It's kind of like when you catch yourself using the same phrase over and over again, or you find someone who talks with that upswing in their voice, and so you listen to it and you listen to it, and then all of a sudden you find yourself doing it one day.
What?
Yeah.
See what I did there?
So yeah, I saw what you did there. And so sometimes we latch on to what somebody else is doing.
Right.
And thinking that we don't do that, but we need to observe ourselves first so that we can be better communicators to other people.
I would challenge you to every day spend only 10 minutes looking at this information and putting it into practice and seeing if you could recognize the different communication styles. But to your point earlier, you don't need to necessarily know what everybody's is and morph to all of them. You just need to get in the practice of delivering in different ways. And I guess it depends really on the size of the audience that you're talking to, right?
Well, yes. I mean, if you're in front of a group of people, if you're a presenter in front of a group of people, 100 people, even 30 people, you can't take the time to figure out how they process information. That's why you have to have your presentation and I don't care if it's a group of 30 people or 3 people.
Right.
You're doing a presentation. You got to cover all communication styles so that you don't lose anybody at any given time. Because after 15 minutes, they're ready to check out. If you're not in their communication style, they're ready to check out. You have to bring them into the fold by doing something that's going to attract them. Yeah, definitely. So I do think it's a good idea to spend some time thinking about your own communication style and making sure that you communicate not just the way you want to process information, but in the way other people might want to. And by being aware, you will have better outcomes in your meetings and in your opportunities with people. And I think it's a great idea for a sales meeting.
And it doesn't take long. It's like any process that you implement, it becomes a habit after a short period of time.
It's just observe. And that's all it takes. You observe yourself, listen to yourself, listen to your words, watch your actions, and you go, oh, look at that. And there are different keys. So yeah, a lot of fun.
Now, I suppose if you're one-on-one with somebody, does it then make more sense to just stick with their communication style?
But you don't know what their communication style is.
Okay.
You don't know. And
we think we know, but we may not necessarily.
It's not up to us to analyze.
Okay.
It's up to us to do everything, to cover all the bases. When you walk into a room with somebody, you greet them, you shake their hand, you talk with them a little bit, you hand them some information, you give them an opportunity to touch and feel whatever it is, give them the opportunity to do and write. You got it all. So it's not paying attention to who they are. Just make sure you do it all. And you're not going to lose them if you use everything.
Right.
You'll lose them if you try to do only one because you think you got it.
And now I happen to be in automotive. We're in yarn. We're in food.
I was in real estate.
So this is really something applicable to all industries.
Families. Husbands and wives, children. You can have 3 children, 5 children, 2 children. They all communicate in their own way. And when you might say something to one of them and they get it, you communicate in the same way to another, and they're looking at you like you have 2 heads.
I find it amazing the number of people that are not familiar with this.
Yeah.
But I had a good conversation with a friend, Wayne, out west,
Uh-huh.
and their kids were homeschooled, and he was very hip to all the different communication styles, because he said that it was very useful to know. And he described each of his kids how they were different communicators, and he said to set them up for success, they really had to immerse themselves in the different communication styles to make sure that they mastered all the material. And you want to know something? I don't know. I don't even know if schools do that.
I was just going to say, of course they do. Think about classrooms. Think about classrooms. You have.
I'm thinking about some of the teachers.
Well, yeah, but in a classroom, you have reading groups.
Yeah.
Right. They teach presentation skills in school today.
Okay.
Children get up in front and they talk about things. Show and tell.
Okay.
Show and tell. We used to have that when I was a kid. So you got a chance to show what you had and tell the story about it.
Okay. So this goes
Yeah.
so far back.
Right.
We don't even think about it.
Oh, yes. The learning styles are a big part of education. Absolutely.
Things we don't even think about are going on around us.
Because it's smooth. We talked about that today too. Feel, felt, and found.
Right.
You've been in sales for more than 30 years. Feel, felt, and found is something we all know about. And
I don't want to hear that one anymore.
if somebody would use it, you go, oh no, not that
Not
one.
that
As soon
one.
as they start,
Oh my God.
because they didn't learn how to incorporate it into a conversation. They just used the theory and put it into practice, and it was just it was crazy. So yes, communication is about communicating in these different ways is no different than that. It can't be like you're checking off boxes while you're talking or communicating with someone. It's just observing and making sure that you reach all of them. Look who's on there,
Jessica A's is on. Special education teachers have to adapt and manage IEPs, individual education plans.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Jessica is a knitwear designer. Who is also a professional in other rights as well. So thank you, Jessica, for joining us tonight. Yeah. So yes, teachers have to know all that and process it too. So really good stuff. Have fun.
Yeah, we covered some good stuff here tonight.
Absolutely.
Any questions you and the audience have? Anything that's stuck out for you, or things that you might have some questions on?
Or situations that you have.
Situations?
Yeah.
Or not.
Sounds like my show now, where we have to give people a chance to write the things in the comments.
Right. We've come off a busy weekend. We had our annual fall friendship retreat, and we had people fly in. Literally, it was they got there by planes, trains, and automobiles.
That's true. They did.
Right. So to all of you in automotive that say the customer won't drive across town to come buy tires from you, maybe it's the way you're communicating to them.
Building that relationship. And we do these shows, this show, my show.
Yeah.
They're all video, they're all virtual.
Yeah.
None of this is face to face. We're not having a conversation with you. I'm sure if we were having one-on-one conversations with you all, there'd be a lot more happening in the conversation side of it.
Right.
But because of the method of communication here, we have to wait for the chat box to catch up with what's happening. But yes, people fly in. Why? Because you create the customer experience. It's not about yarn. It's about the experience. And you get 3 days of immersion in friendship and knitting.
Yeah.
It's not really yarn, it's friendship and knitting. Yarn is the byproduct that everybody comes for, but they actually come for the camaraderie every time. And so, yeah, it's great communication.
16 hours. One lady took trains plural, from Virginia to come.
So Greg Dudley
says, there are many ways to start a vehicle: hot wire, key, push start, and button.
That's right. Use them all.
That's it. And the old Fords were easy because you just jumped the coil and you spark the starter solenoid and you're off and driving.
Does that mean without a key?
Yeah. That means without a key.
Shame on you.
One time I went out on the Bears boat, and we were hanging out on the boat. It got dark, and then as the boat wouldn't start. If he told me that there was a problem with the boat, I would not have gone out on the boat with the bear. So I had to jump start the engine the same way. And let me tell you, when you're in water and you're sparking stuff, what a good shock.
Weren't sure that was going to have a good ending, were you?
No. I should have known something was up when we hit the first bump and the side glass flew off the boat. I should have known at that point that it was probably high time to turn around and go back in. Oh man. What?
No, nothing. I'm waiting for you. Your show.
That's my show. So I think we pretty much covered everything that we're going to cover.
I think we did. I had a great time. I had an opportunity to talk, and he got to listen.
Yeah, it was a captive audience, and I wasn't on my phone.
No, you weren't on your phone.
If anyone is not connected with us that sees this either live or on the replay, by all means, if it makes sense for us to connect, I'd be happy to. And I'm going to throw in a shameless plug there. Everyone knows somebody that knits. Who do you know? So we have a page on LinkedIn, Nitty Gritty Yarn Girl Yarn Shop. Also on Facebook and on YouTube. And Monday nights at 8:00, we have our Twisted Stitches show.
Yep. So I go live on Monday nights. He goes live on Sunday nights.
And then other random times. So thanks a lot for watching. We got one comment coming in. Greg Dudley, the Paul and Paulette Show.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a safe and successful next week. And we will see you next week on Sunday Night Live.
Bye-bye, everybody.
I've got my buddy Paul Machine coming on, and we're going to be talking about the last month of the year, what you can do to set yourself up for success. Thanks again.